I wake up before dawn. In the dim light filtering through the window, I gaze at my husband Mark sleeping beside me, his breath steady. Lately, I've noticed the wrinkles on his face seem to have deepened. "Emily, time to wake up," I call out as I head to my daughter's room. 3-year-old Emily rubs her sleepy eyes and sits up when she hears my voice. As I stroke her golden curls, she responds with a soft, "Good morning, Mama." While preparing breakfast, I hear Mark coming down the stairs. "Good morning, Mark," I greet him, but he only nods gruffly. As soon as he sits at the table, he grabs a beer from the fridge. Seeing him drink alcohol first thing in the morning pains my heart. 6 months ago, we were a happy family. Mark had worked at a construction company for 15 years, and I was a part-time nurse at the local clinic. On weekends, we'd go on family picnics or enjoy barbecues in the backyard. But everything changed when Mark was suddenly laid off. At first, he was positive about finding a new job, but after repeatedly failing interviews, he seemed to lose confidence. "Mark, don't you have an interview today?" I ask. He grimaces. "I'm going." "You don't need to tell me," he answers curtly, downing his beer in one go. I sigh deeply. My once cheerful and family-oriented husband has become irritable and listless. He turns to alcohol almost daily, spending less and less time with the family. As I feed Emily breakfast, I wonder how I can bring our family back to its former happy state. But I can't find a way, and my anxiety only grows. "Mama, will Papa find a job?" Emily asks worriedly. I force a smile and reply, "It'll be all right. Papa's trying his best." But I wasn't sure if I truly believed that anymore. I was sitting on the living room sofa, waiting for Mark to return from his interview. Around 6 p.m., I heard the front door open. "How did it go?" I asked. Mark tersely replied, "No good." His eyes were bloodshot, and the smell of alcohol wafted from him. He had clearly been drinking after the interview. "Mark, if we just try a little harder." I began, but he cut me off with a wave of his hand. "Shut up. What do you know?" His shout made me instinctively shrink back. That night, dinner was wrapped in a heavy silence. Emily looked anxiously back and forth between Mark and me. I tried to start a conversation, but Mark's cold attitude made the words catch in my throat. Over the next few weeks, the atmosphere in the house grew increasingly tense. Mark drank more and more, becoming angry over trivial matters. On nights when he came home drunk, I would put Emily to bed early and shut myself in my room. One evening, when I returned from work, the living room was a mess. Empty beer cans were scattered on the floor, and the TV was blaring. Mark lay on the sofa, staring blankly at the screen. "Mark, please don't drink here," I said. Suddenly, he stood up and came at me. "Shut up. It's my life. Let me do what I want." His shouting made me step back involuntarily. Just then, I heard Emily crying. She had been watching our fight from the top of the stairs. I rushed to her and hugged her tight. It's okay, Emily. Pop is just a little tired. I tried to reassure her, but I could hear my own voice trembling. That night, after putting Emily to bed, I cried alone in the kitchen. Memories of our once happy family overlapped with the current reality, making my chest tighten. What should I do? I asked myself repeatedly, but found no answer. The next day, I mustered up the courage to confront Mark. Mark, why don't we try counseling? For our family's sake, I suggested. He scoffed. There's nothing wrong with me. You're just making a big deal out of nothing. Those words made me feel like something inside me had broken. But for Emily's sake, I had to protect this family. Even as I thought this, I couldn't suppress the growing anxiety and fear. That night, unable to sleep, I gazed at the full moon visible from the window. What would tomorrow bring? Would our family continue to fall apart? Or would a miracle occur? My heart continued to waver with these unanswerable questions. That day, I had worked late. When I got home, it was already past 11 p.m. As I opened the front door, I noticed an unusual silence pervading the house. Mark? Emily? I called out, but there was no answer. Anxiety gripped my chest. As I stepped into the living room, there was Mark. He was sitting in a chair with a shotgun across his lap. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was clearly drunk. Mark, what are you doing? My voice was shaking. So you're finally home. Mark's voice was low, with a dangerous edge to it. It's all your fault. You've ruined my life. The moment he stood up and aimed the shotgun, my blood ran cold. Mark, calm down. Where's Emily? That brat's upstairs. She won't get in our way anymore. I tried to move towards the stairs, but Mark blocked my path. Don't move, he shouted, pointing the gun at me. You're both a burden. Get out. Just then, I heard small footsteps. Turning around, I saw Emily coming down the stairs. Her eyes were wide with fear. Emily, go back upstairs. I cried, but it was too late. Mark turned the gun towards Emily. You too. Get out of this house. Papa, please, don't shoot. Emily's voice was trembling, tears streaming down her face. I instinctively stood in front of Emily. Mark, stop. She's your daughter. Shut up. Mark yelled, taking a step towards us. In that moment, something changed within me. The fear disappeared, replaced by a strong determination. Mark, listen, I spoke as calmly as I could. This isn't you. You loved us, remember? Do you remember the day Emily was born? How happy you were. A flicker of doubt crossed Mark's eyes. We love you. But you're sick right now. You need help. Lies. Mark shouted, but his voice lacked its previous strength. It's true, Mark. Let's get through this together. As a family. I slowly approached Mark. I could see his hand starting to shake. Papa, Emily called out in a small voice. I love you. At those words, all anger drained from Mark's face. He dropped the shotgun and collapsed to the floor. What was I about to do? He muttered. I rushed to Mark and embraced him. Emily joined us, and the three of us hugged each other tightly. But this moment of relief was short-lived. Suddenly, Mark grimaced in pain and clutched his head. Mark? Are you okay? Instead of answering, he let out a groan. Then, the next moment, he collapsed to the floor. Mark! I cried out, shaking his body. But he had lost consciousness. I quickly grabbed the phone and dialed 911. As the sound of the ambulance siren approached, I held Mark's hand tightly and continued to pray. Little did I know then that this night would dramatically change our family's life. Amidst the blaring sirens of the ambulance, I held Mark's hand tightly as we headed to the hospital together. I left Emily with a neighbor, and as I left, her anxious face pierced my heart. I spent long hours in the hospital corridor. Surrounded by white walls and the smell of disinfectant, I kept praying. Please, Mark. Live for us. Several hours later, a doctor appeared. Mrs. Thompson, I need to speak with you. Led to the consultation room, I sat down. My heart was pounding furiously. We have the results of your husband's head CT scan, the doctor said, carefully choosing his words. We've found a tumor in his brain. At those words, I felt as if the world had stopped. A brain tumor. My voice sounded distant, even to myself. The doctor continued, the tumor is in the frontal lobe. This area is involved in personality and emotional control. It's likely that this tumor has been causing your husband's recent behavioral changes. Suddenly, all the pieces seemed to fall into place. Mark's irritability, alcohol dependence, and that night's events. It had all been because of the illness. But why didn't we notice until now? I asked, holding back tears. The early symptoms of brain tumors can often be confused with stress or other factors, the doctor explained gently. Especially personality changes can be difficult for both the person and those around them to notice. I took a deep breath. What should we do? Surgery is necessary, the doctor stated. If we remove the tumor, there's a high chance your husband's symptoms will improve. Those words made me feel a glimmer of hope. But at the same time, new anxieties arose. The surgery, will it be successful? There are risks, but considering your husband's age and the location of the tumor, the chances of success are high. I nodded silently. I understood that this was the only way to save our family. We'll prepare for the surgery, the doctor stood up. Mrs. Thompson, your family's support will be crucial for your husband's recovery. I steeled my resolve. I understand. We'll do our best. As I left the consultation room, I felt a new strength welling up inside me. This could be a new beginning for our family. I decided to believe in that. When Mark opened his eyes after the surgery, I was by his bedside. Seeing his eyes focus, my heart raced. "Sarah," he called out weakly. "What happened?" Fighting back tears, I explained the situation. About the brain tumor, the surgery, and that night. As Mark listened, his expression gradually changed. What have I done to you all?" Tears welled up in his eyes. "It's okay, Mark," I squeezed his hand. "It was because of the illness. Things will get better now." The road to recovery was long and difficult. After the surgery, Mark began rehabilitation. In addition to training for walking and daily activities, he also received therapy to learn emotional control. I was desperate to juggle work, housework, taking care of Emily, and nursing Mark. Sometimes I felt exhausted and wanted to give up everything. But seeing Mark's sincere efforts, I couldn't help but keep going. At first, Emily was afraid of Mark. The memory of that night was deeply etched in her little heart. However, small daily changes gradually opened her heart. One day, when I saw Mark reading a picture book to Emily, I couldn't help but tear up. I felt that the gentle husband I once knew was slowly returning. However, not everything was smooth sailing. Occasionally, Mark would remember his past actions and be overcome with deep remorse. At such times, I would hold him and say, "We can't change the past, but the future is different." I, too, had to face my inner conflicts. Forgiving Mark wasn't easy. The fear from that night sometimes haunted me in nightmares. But I received counseling and gradually faced my emotions. Through this, I began to realize my own strength. The power to overcome difficulties, the courage to protect my family, and the ability to love. I realized that all of these had been nurtured through this experience. As Mark's recovery progressed, he began to deeply reflect on his actions. "Sarah, Emily, I'm so sorry," he said one day, hugging us. "From now on, I'll cherish you. I promise to make you happy." At those words, I felt like the last wall in my heart had crumbled. "Let's work hard together, Mark," I answered, leaning against him. Emily changed little by little too. At first, she was afraid of Mark, but gradually she began to approach him. Seeing her pull Mark's hand saying, "Papa, let's play together," made my heart warm. When we went to the park as a family and I heard Emily laugh loudly, I couldn't help but tear up. How I had missed her smile. Mark returned to work, this time balancing it while valuing time with his family. On holidays, we spent time going on picnics or watching movies together. One night, after putting Emily to bed, as Mark and I were relaxing in the living room, he quietly said, "Sarah, I was saved because of you. Thank you so much." I held his hand and replied, "We all overcame this together as a family." Outside the window, a full moon was shining. The same moon I once looked up at with anxiety and fear now seemed filled with the light of hope. Our family had overcome difficulties and become stronger. I found hope in our future life. A year has passed since then. Our family life has become incomparably more peaceful and happy than before. Mark has returned to work and now maintains a healthy balance while valuing time with his family. Emily has started kindergarten and happily reports new discoveries and stories about her friends every day. Our family bond has grown stronger after overcoming that hardship. On weekends, we enjoy picnics in the park or have family movie nights, creating many memories together. I've changed a lot too. Through that experience, I discovered my inner strength and reaffirmed the importance of family. Now I'm helping people who have had similar experiences in a local support group. Watching Mark give Emily a piggyback ride in the garden, I'm filled with deep relief and happiness. We're still not perfect. We sometimes argue and get anxious. But especially at such times, we try to remember the importance of caring for and supporting each other. We don't know what the future holds, but I'm certain we can overcome anything together. Epilogue. On a spring Sunday 5 years later, we were smiling and chatting while having a barbecue in the garden. Mark was listening intently to Emily talk about her school event, and I was watching over them. Suddenly, Emily suggested, "Hey, let's take a picture together." We huddled together and smiled at Emily's smartphone. The shutter sound rang out, and Emily happily showed us the screen. There were 3 people huddled together, looking happy. As I gazed at that photo, I quietly made a vow. No matter what happens from now on, I'll continue to protect these smiles. And we'll remain a family that cares for and supports each other.